Grace Owl here, and today I am coming at you with my April 2018 wrap-up. So, April was a really crazy month for me, as you guys know from watching my reading vlogs. Finals was upon me, and so things were really crazy, and I didn't actually get a lot of reading done, I don't think, but in terms of physical books. But I did get a lot of reading done in terms of other formats of books. For instance, my audiobooks were my lifesaver this month because they made it so much easier for me to be able to digest a book while doing other things, because as you guys know, I was working a lot and basically going to and from classes and work and being at work when I didn't have anything to do. Listening to audiobooks was really great for me because it gave me the ability to listen to them despite having everything going on at once. And I'm sorry for my lights flickering off and on in the background. They tend to do that for some reason. I don't know why. But I wanted to get through these books, so I ended up DNFing one book, and I read one ebook, and I read two audiobooks. I technically started a third one at the very end of April, but it kind of counts more for my May TBR because I actually finished it in the very beginning of May, and I will talk to you guys about that in my May TBR. But I will at least mention the book that I ended up starting in at the end of April so that you guys kind of know what to expect for the May TBR. So the first book that I read was an ebook copy of Catching Stars by Kayla Keenan. I was graciously sent this by Off Tones Publishing in exchange for a review because this is a debut novel that is now nearly out. By the time this video comes out, I think it will be the actual release date. So congrats to Kayla Keenan and happy book birthday to Catching Stars. So for those of you who don't really know about this book, the way that Off Tones describes it is that it's combining things from Truth Witch by Susan Dennard and Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I don't really know if that's actually accurate because I've never read those books, but it definitely has some great magical elements and is filled with very morally gray characters that I really enjoyed. I ended up giving this novel 5 out of 5 stars, and I'll tell you a little bit about the plot just so in case you're interested in it to pick it up on the actual release date. So the book follows two main characters. The first one is Jayan, who is this old kind of assassin. She's not exactly old, but she used to be an assassin basically, and when things kind of come up from her past, she tries to decide to run away from this town of Paval and try to escape for her own freedom, to kind of get herself away from this negative kind of energy that is brought about from the palace. You don't really know what it is until the very end of the book why she decides to leave this city in the first place, like what about her past is really catching up with her. But she can't escape until she brings back this guy named Maddox Kell, who is our second protagonist. Now, Maddox is a character who used to be a soldier, was really affluent in combat and things like that, and was really wanting to be a successful soldier for Paval. But unfortunately, when he starts his training and things like that and actually becoming a soldier, he is overtaken by this mysterious demon and ends up killing 4 innocent people and is essentially framed for it, even though he has no memory of doing anything of the sort in the first place. And so he is sentenced to death in Paval and somehow is able to escape, and essentially Jayan has to go and find him and bring him back to the palace. But not before these guys form an unlikely friendship that basically tries to help the other one out. It's a really action-packed story, and it's filled with magic and secrets and lies and deception, and I really enjoyed this story, mostly for the relationship between Jayan and Maddox, because it doesn't end up becoming a romance. There is no insta-love in this story, which I was so happy with, because I hate insta-love so much, especially in fantasy work, because I feel like it is so unrealistic with these characters, especially like Jayan and Maddox, who you would think would form a insta-love relationship going through the story, but they really don't. And I think that the plot was really well done. There wasn't too much that really went on, but there was a lot of secrets being developed in terms of kind of things within the palace and within Jayan and Maddox themselves. And each individual character grew so much over the course of this story, individually as well as together. And I really think that it was done so well. And I was so impressed with it that I immediately wanted to be able to follow Kayla Keenan on Twitter so that I could check out to see when the next book is going to come out, which won't be for a good long while. But I wanted to be able to follow the process of her making the second book because I loved this book so much, and I'm so excited to see what she has to offer with book 2 and with her other another work in progress that she's currently working on, because I not only really liked the plot itself, but I liked her writing style and the voices that she gave both Jane and Maddox, because they were so different. The second book that I completed in the month of April was The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. Now, I listened to the audiobook of this, and unfortunately there were some times where I had a little bit of trouble following the story, but not to the point where I disliked the book. I actually really enjoyed the book a lot. I think I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars as well. And this was a book that I remember so many people throughout my life telling me that I needed to read, because it was heartbreaking, it had a lot of hope involved with it, it was historical fiction, it really had a different spin on the whole Hitler era that was going on in Germany at the time, and it was all of those things and more. Like, I think I cried through the last quarter of this novel so many times. I wouldn't be able to even count on both my hands how many times I cried within the last quarter of this novel, because not only was it incredibly heartbreaking to read of the things that were happening in this town, but to this young girl named Liesel Memminger. And the story of her is basically, it starts out that she is being taken to this couple in Germany and is being adopted by them because her mother for some reason is unable to take care of her. And when she is on the train to go there, her younger brother actually dies of sickness on the train. And before they go to this family, they have to bury him. And she finds this book called The Gravedigger's Handbook. And from there, it starts this whole life of learning how to read and write and stealing all kinds of books, hence the name The Book Thief. But along with that, there's so much in terms of how the family dynamics are. It also showcases a lot of her learning process as she's coming up in the world, as she gets older, and especially when it comes to things like the Hitler regime that was building in this time, because it essentially starts right at the beginning of the Hitler regime. And the coolest thing about this entire story is that it is done through the perspective of Death himself. And it was so interesting because the beginning of the story really pulls in with a lot of ideas and thoughts about death, and there's a lot of really amazing imagery that is done through Death and how he describes the characters and how he describes his day-to-day life as he's going about things, and when he meets Liesel for the first time, and all these different events he describes so poetically and so darkly that it is almost impossible to believe that this is somebody else other than Death. Like, it's so clear that this is the perspective of Death that it really captures you throughout the entire story, and it was just so well written. I think that the prose was absolutely wonderful. I think that each individual character had its purpose. There wasn't any characters that weren't needed. I think that this was absolutely a perfect book. And the perspective of Liesel being someone who's not Jewish and someone who doesn't understand why people are attacking those that are Jewish is really interesting as well, because a lot of Holocaust-based stories deal with characters who are Jewish and who are going through the concentration camps, whereas this story doesn't. It focuses on a character that is outside of all of that and doesn't quite understand what is going on, but understands that it's wrong and understands that there's something not right with the world. And Liesel just has such a special place in my heart now because of this story, and I truly, really love this book for everything that it is, and I really recommend it to anyone who gets the chance to read it or listen to it, because it's definitely got some really great moments in it, and it also really teaches you a lot about this time period, and even just it gives you such a unique perspective on things as you're reading through the story. The third book I worked through and actually DNF'd was the third book in the Maze Runner series, The Death Cure by James Dashner. Now, I don't really know why I wanted to DNF this. It was kind of a mix of things. I'm not really a huge fan of James Dashner at the moment, considering his recent acts that he has gone about, but I did want to try to finish it. This was my random TBR pick for the month of April, and I don't know, I think part of it too was I didn't feel like I really cared about the characters anymore in this book. I feel like it had been almost a year since I had read The Scorch Trials, and I really liked that one a lot, but I think my views on it have definitely changed between that and The Maze Runner and this one after having read this one. And I got through a good, probably third of it, and I just really didn't seem to care anymore about the world or the characters or anything. And I kind of started to realize that James Dashner's writing was very much more of a middle grade, I think, than anything else. I just didn't really like it as much as I had anticipated, and decided that basically because I don't really want to support James Dashner anymore, despite having liked The Maze Runner and The Scorch Trials at first. A multitude of things I think has caused me to not finish this book, and I really just don't want these on my shelves anymore because I don't want to support someone who is so vile and so disgusting to humans that I don't want their stuff on my shelf. I can't do it. And finally, the last book that I finished in April was the first book in the Ember and the Ashes series, and Ember and the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. Oh my god, I can't even begin to describe to you guys how much I love this book. Oh my god, I think I loved it more than Catching Stars. It's probably the favorite for the month because this book was so actiony and filled with intrigue and lies and deceit, and oh my god, it was freaking good. This book needs to be a movie, I swear to god. I will gladly make a screen adaptation for this book if I get the chance to, because this book was so interesting. I loved both the characters of Laia and Elias, and I loved Helene, and I loved all of the side characters. Like, it was so freaking great. I think I actually liked a lot of the bad guys in this book too, which is so weird for me because I never liked a bad guy in a book despite how much I love the book, but this book made me love absolutely everyone and their intentions and the reasons that they're in this book. Oh my god, it was just so freaking good. So I picked up this book mostly because I had heard that A Reaper at the Gates was coming out in the next couple months, and I really wanted to try to get through both An Ember in the Ashes and A Torch Against the Night before A Reaper at the Gates comes out, because I heard so many good things about this series, and I saw that it was available for the most part on my Overdrive. I had to wait for it to come in though, but I was just so excited to start this book because I heard so many good things about it, and it did not disappoint in the slightest. Basically, in this world of the Empire, there is this group called the Marshals that rule everything. They have enslaved this other group called the Scholars, who are fantastic with art and literature and pretty much everything under the sun, including with scholarly work. And the Marshals really don't see a purpose to it, and so they want to try to eradicate and enslave the Scholars and completely eradicate everything that they've worked for over the last hundreds of years. Now, this is supposed to be a very Roman-esque kind of society, but it is not exactly in Rome. It actually seems to be more kind of in the England area, England kind of United Kingdom area, based on the dialect of the kinds of characters and the description of the world. Basically, it seems to be more placed in kind of either England or maybe even Scotland and Ireland. Maybe it's all kind of within that area. And the story follows two main characters. The first being Laia, who is a scholar, and when her family is killed and her older brother is taken into prison for treason, she decides that she has to try and save him, and so forms an alliance with this group called the Resistance, who is hell-bent on taking down the Empire, and essentially has to become a spy for them in order to try to save her brother. Then we have Elias, who is the most amazing military prodigy that the Empire has to offer. Being the son of a commandant and being a wonderful combat artist himself, he has really shown his worth and shown his skill within his entire group of masks, which are basically the soldiers that are within this empire. And at the school that he goes to called Blackcliff, when you are 6 years old, you are brought into this school and you are trained to become a deadly assassin and monster, essentially, is what I would like to call them, because they are monsters. And the thing is, though, is that Elias is not really into all of that. He does not really like the idea of going and killing innocent people, despite the fact that he is in this place of power, and he is in this extremely high position of power in the first place, with his mom being this really big military leader. He doesn't really seem to like it, and so he really wants to try to escape. And basically these two come together in an unlikely scenario, and they both really don't help each other but don't hurt each other either. What's really interesting about this story is that there's not really a clear connection between these two until much later in the novel. Actually, towards the very end of it is when they really start to get to know each other. It's about probably a good 75% of the novel before they actually sit and have a true conversation together. And I really liked this because the relationship was a very slow burn, but also kind of had an insta-love thing about it. I don't really know how to explain it. Like, it wasn't like they were instantly in love with each other, but it was that they met and they had this kind of weird connection between the two of them, but it was kind of hidden from Elias, basically. Like, he kind of hid it away, and it didn't really blossom until the very end of the novel when he started to really seem to have feelings for this girl, but he wasn't even sure what his feelings were. Like, he was questioning it all, which was really great, and it saved itself, I think, from an insta-love trope by doing that, by making the character be aware of the possible problem with falling in love with this girl that he barely knows. And So it was really, really interesting, and I really enjoyed that a lot. I'm very excited to read Torch Against the Night. I do plan on reading it in May because I need to read it. I need to read it before A Reaper at the Gates comes out. And then I found out that Sabaa Tahir is making a 4th book after A Reaper at the Gates, and I'm so excited because I love this world so much. I love these characters, and I do not want this series to end. I can't. I love Laia and Elias so much, and I love Helene, who is a whole other character that is a whole other can of worms. And I think this story really goes a lot into the ideas of racism, and basically a lot of kind of discrimination against groups that are seemingly different from you, which there's a lot of that. There's so much in this book that I could talk about, but I have a whole review that I'm going to go into later, so I'm going to save it for that. And then the book that I started at the end of April and continued on in the beginning of May was The Female of the Species by Mindy McGinnis. I'm going to have a whole review on this book after I go through my May TBR because I did finish it at the very beginning of May before this video was filmed, and I just got to say it was absolutely fantastic. I absolutely loved it. I think that it has a lot of really great messages within it. Some things that weren't super realistic in my opinion, but a lot of it, like 95% of it, was really well done, and I was really impressed by it. So there you guys go. Those are the books that I read in April of 2018. Let me know what you guys read during the month of April down in the comments below. And now that I'm home, I'm so happy because I'm done with finals, I'm done with the semester, so I'm going to be filming all day today, so I'm very, very excited. So thank you guys so much for joining me in this video. If you guys did enjoy it, please do give it a big thumbs up, and if you're not already and you'd like to be, hit that button down below and subscribe to become an owlet in our flock, and I will see all of you guys in my next video. Bye guys!